really just trying to remember as much as you possibly can, because you're never sure you're ever going to be there again. And if you were told that you were going to eat your favorite food for the last time, you would savor that meal, and you would remember every bite, and the way things smelled, and the way things tasted, and the texture of the food in your mouth. And if you could end up treating your whole life like that, I think that's important, because you never do know when it's going to be the last time. Going on to today's chapter, go to page 286. Right after that, I wish I treated everything like it's the last time, Oscar reiterates that sentiment. I wish I had known I wasn't going to see Mr. Black again when we shook hands that afternoon. I wouldn't have let go, or I would have forced him to keep searching with me, or I would have told him about how my dad called when I was home. But I didn't know, just like I didn't know it was the last time Dad would ever tuck me in, because you never know. So when he said, "I finished, I hope you understand," I said, "I understand," even though I didn't understand. I never went to find him on the observation deck of the Empire State Building, because I was happier believing he was there than finding out for sure. Okay. Now, this next chapter, or section on page 287, this is where Oscar pets the baby. And that quiz question I gave you about what does Oscar ask to pet is one of my favorite inappropriate sounding questions that's not inappropriate. But after this whole book that's more or less been focused on death, we get at least a page that's focused on life, and Oscar gets the other end of the spectrum. As difficult as it is to go through losing someone, the other flip side to that is if you decide to have your own kids, just how miraculous. And I realize it's one of the most natural things you can go through, but it feels miraculous when it happens to you, when you see your own life that you've created, and that little kid that is completely dependent on you. And Oscar gets to meet this little kid and has to pet it. So he gets, kind of the flip side of all the difficult things he's been going through. On page 291, this is where Oscar finally figures out why his mom knows everything. And he goes to talk to Abby Black. I didn't know if she was wrong to, because this is Oscar's mom had picked up in the middle of the phone message. And I didn't know why Mom hadn't said anything about their conversation, or even about the message. The key? You told her about it? I assumed she already knew. And my mission? It didn't make any sense. Why hadn't Mom said anything, or done anything, or cared at all? And then all of a sudden, it made perfect sense. All of a sudden, I understood why when Mom had asked me where I was going, and I said, ouch, she didn't ask me any more questions. She didn't have to, because she knew. It made sense that Ada knew that I lived on the Upper West Side, and that Carol had hot cookies waiting when I knocked on her door, and that the doorman 215@hotmail.com said, "Good luck, Oscar," when I left, even though I was 99% sure I hadn't told them my name was Oscar. They knew I was coming. My mom had talked to all of them before I had. Which is nice to know, because now it doesn't make Oscar's mom seem like a delinquent parent. One last thing, on page 305, this chapter is really hard for me to read. I think this is one of the saddest parts in the book, but it shows you how far Oscar's come. In the beginning of the book, he couldn't talk about any of this stuff, and he just kept everything to himself. But through the process of talking about this over and over and over with all the different blacks that he met, he's been able to tell the story more and more, and then finally he was able to tell the entire thing to the man he found, Mr. Black he found. And on 302, he says, I've timed the message, and it's 1 minute and 28 seconds, which means it ended at 10:28, which was when the building came down, so maybe that's how he died. I'm so sorry, he said. I've never told that to anyone. He squeezed me, almost like a hug, and I could feel him shaking his head. I asked, do you forgive me? Do I forgive you? Yeah, for not being able to pick up, for not being able to tell anyone. He said, I do. And that's one of the, this is one of the big messages of the book. And this is one of the reasons I had you do the writing assignment, where you write the letter to the class. I think one of the most important things you can do when you're going through something hard is to share that with other people, and not try to keep it on yourself. Because when you keep it on your own shoulders and you refuse to tell anyone, you end up like Thomas, who can't speak, or the woman on top of the Empire State Building, or any of those other characters in the book, and there's been a lot of them that haven't been able to move past their grief, the cancer of never being able to let go. And then lastly, on 304, 305, Oscar finally receives a letter back from Stephen Hawking. And one of the other big themes of this book is, what is the meaning of life? It goes back to when Oscar was reading Brief History of Time, and the turtles stacked on top of the plate, and all these different things, and Stephen Hawking writes, Albert Einstein, a hero of mine, once wrote, the situation is the following. We are standing in front of a closed box which we cannot open. I don't have to tell you that the vast majority of the universe is composed of dark matter. The fragile balance depends on things we'll never be able to see, hear, smell, taste, or touch. Life itself depends on it. What's real? What isn't real? Maybe those aren't the right questions to be asking. What does life depend on? I wish I had made things for life to depend on. And Oscar's been trying to figure this out the whole time. And it has changed his religious beliefs, and it has changed his beliefs. He used to be completely an atheist. He said, I used to not believe in things I couldn't see. And he says, earlier in the book, I don't necessarily believe in those things now, but I just feel life is a lot more complicated. And life is complicated. And so, when you finish the book for tomorrow, and hopefully you've saved the little flip book at the end for the end, that's kind of where we're at. And Oscar has completed a big journey, and he's definitely progressed. And while it doesn't end on a unrealistically hopeful note, you definitely see that he is in a better place than he was in the beginning. And I think this is kind of what the process of moving through grief is like. You don't just suddenly wake up one day and feel great, but you keep moving forward every day as long as you keep moving. And that is all, and I will see you tomorrow.